It's Friday, October 16th. Let's talk PlayStation. I'll talk about this news story real quick because it is pretty important, but it's kind of old at this point because it came out right after LTPS was uploaded last week. But basically, Xbox head Phil Spencer was at the 2015 Geek Summit, GeekWire Summit, discussing a little bit about Xbox and things like that. Somebody asked him, do you think Xbox One will be able to beat PlayStation 4 at some point or catch up? And the interesting thing about this is that Phil was quite honest and came out and said he doesn't know. He acknowledged the fact that Sony has a huge lead over them, but also kind of giving more of a PR kind of self-defense answer, which is pretty typical, and more so of we're more so about at this point not catching up to Sony, but rather getting more customers, making Xbox better. We're proud of our games lineup and things like that. So but overall, this is one of the very few instances. I mean, this is not often at all that you see this, which is some major figure in a company coming out and publicly admitting, like, hey, our competition is pretty much, we don't know if we're going to be able to catch up to them. We don't know if, we're not about beating them or something like that. I mean, typically you don't see something like that. And that's what I've always liked about Phil is that, regardless of what's going on, he's very truthful. Which is something I would love to see more of in the games industry is truth, because we don't see that quite often. So we're kind of used to not being told the truth. But I like that about Phil, and I've said this a million times. I love how Phil came into Xbox and was more so about bettering Xbox and not necessarily just being super aggressive and trying to really clobber Sony. Coming in, being an honest guy, and really trying to turn that division around. And since he's been at the helm, he really has done some great things. And personally, I agree with Phil. At this point, I don't see Xbox One catching up to PlayStation 4 just because it is a pretty considerable lead. I mean, a lot of people do look at this and they think to themselves, oh, well, look at how 360 had a considerable lead over PS3, and PS3 actually caught up. Given the fact that it did take, 4 or 5 years, PlayStation 3 did manage to actually catch up. But, so certainly that's the case here. Xbox One could catch up. It's very possible. I personally don't see it happening because, again, PlayStation 4 is, of course, and this is what helped the PlayStation 3 catch up to 360, is that, PS4 still has considerable lead in Europe and Japan, and it's leading in, America right now, North America, and that's always been sort of the Microsoft territory, so the fact that Sony's still holding on to that region, and of course there are 2 other regions, and of course the rest of the world, they're just doing very well. I don't see them catching up anytime soon, but it is certainly possible, but at this point I'm just not seeing it happen. This next news story is actually old. We should have talked about this last week, but no site was really posting this, so I found it pretty interesting nonetheless, so we're going to talk about it. PlayStation VR, so Dr. Richard Marks, of course, who is head of the PlayStation Magic Lab, so to speak, the R&D department where he kind of works on all those things, whether it's, PlayStation Eye, PlayStation Move, and now PlayStation VR. He was talking a little bit about PSVR and how basically, in regards to something like Oculus, where when the consumer version of Oculus comes out, of course, Oculus is going to keep reiterating on the product and releasing new consumer versions. He basically said with PlayStation VR, that won't be the case. When when PlayStation VR comes out, it's going to be PlayStation VR, and it's going to be probably the only box that's going to live throughout the console generation. I mean, that's not necessarily surprising, I guess, because if you were to release multiple iterations of it that improves in the hardware within one console generation, that's just going to, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Segregate, so to speak, or, mess up the pool of games and the compatibility and things like that. It's just going to make it even more worse, so, but, you see what I'm getting at, right? Like, that's not going to work at all. But he was quick to mention, kind of how the console cycle pretty much always works out, which is that a console will come out. It's got some very, very good power to it, but of course, since a console is a closed box and it's going to stay the same power for its whole generation, developers typically have to find new ways and get new SDKs and kind of optimize the console to get more better looking games out of it. So by the time the console is near the end of its life cycle, games are still looking good, if not even better than they were when they came out. And that's going to be the same case with PlayStation VR, is that developers are going to keep working on the actual set peripheral that's going to come out, and we won't be seeing any sort of revision. So basically it's going to live with the PlayStation 4, so to speak, which again, I would hope that's the case. Okay, so this one is pretty cool. So in the UK, Sony's going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of PS4, and they're going to be releasing they're only making 20,000 of these. They're little Steelbook cases, got a cool little PS1 finish, and basically It's going to give you a year of PlayStation Plus. It's going to give you a 20-pound PSN voucher. So, of course, that adds up right there to $60. So that's pretty cool that you're getting the same value, but you're also getting this cool little Steelbook. You're also actually basically getting a chance to possibly get a 20th anniversary PlayStation 4. So at least 5 of these things out of the 20,000 are going to have a golden ticket, like, you know, Charlie Chocolate Factory style, that is going to, essentially, if you get the ticket, you're going to get a 20th anniversary PS4. So that's pretty cool. But even if you don't get the PS4, I just like the Steelbook. I think this is pretty rad how they're doing this. I mean, what this whole 20th anniversary with PS4 thing, and even when they were doing the 15th anniversary a few years back on PlayStation 3, I just like how Sony's getting so reminiscent and they're getting so nostalgic. I mean, yeah, you might, you know, there's a lot of negative ways to look at that because they're just, you know, kind of shoving it down your throats at this point. But it's reminding me of like how Nintendo is with that stuff. You know, Nintendo is very like, that's like in their DNA to always do callbacks and things like that to their past game and their history. Like, they are all about their bloodline, so to speak, for lack of a better word. They're just always about their history and things like that. And Sony's at the point now where, you know, they're 20 years old. I mean, they're getting to that same point where they can be nostalgic like Nintendo. And I just, you know, I've always said, like, nostalgia certainly, like, clouds people's judgments and things like that, but, I mean, it's obviously nice. I mean, we do, a lot of people, myself included, we do enjoy nostalgia, and we do kind of buy into it. Not necessarily a surprise because they're trying to profit off of it, but hey, I enjoy it. This one's a little interesting. So Nolan North, of course, voice actor for Nathan Drake, discussed a little bit about how he doesn't think people actually want to see an Uncharted movie. We haven't talked about the Uncharted movie in a while, and it's still pretty much up in the air. We don't know, you know, when that thing's actually going to see the light of day. But he had this interesting quote, which was, I think the emotional investment people have with Nathan Drake is so high that it would be very difficult for them to accept somebody else. Even me, my face is Nathan Drake. They might recognize the voice, but I don't even know if they'd accept me. I'm terrible at reading, by the way. Have you not noticed that when I read these quotes? Yes, Nolan thinks people don't want to watch an Uncharted movie, and that's kind of one of the reasons. I mean, I look at that and I think, well, I mean, I really don't care either. I mean, honestly, like, if an Uncharted movie did come out, like, I wouldn't be in a rush to go see it. But that might be a little bit of bias for me because I don't really like movies all that much. I don't go out and see movies all the time and stuff like that. So, even if it's an Uncharted movie, I just have no interest because I know it's not going to be, you know, I would hope that it stays true to the games. I would hope that it is tied very closely to the games and it's good representation of the game. But I mean, you know, if you've played Uncharted, you know these games are like 10 to 15 hours long if you take your time with them. You've got long story arcs, and it's just the translation, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not something I'd be super into to just go out and spend my money on. So I'm just thinking to myself, like, would other people really care? Probably, I don't know, probably not, I would assume. That's what an Uncharted movie would be more so for, like, the general public who just want to see a cool action flick. I mean, how many gamers are really going to care about the Uncharted movie? I don't know. I would assume not that many, but maybe you can tell me otherwise. So for our last news story, let's talk a little bit about the possibilities of Until Dawn 2. So the game's executive producer, Pete Samuels, had this to say. We do talk internally about what Until Dawn 2 could be, as it clearly can't be a sequel in the traditional sense, with the same characters facing the same threat, not least of which because in different stories, some or all of them are already dead. We've investigated other ways we could do Until Dawn 2, but it probably is a little bit early to be discussing that. I think that you should expect the team to build on what we've done with Until Dawn, whether it's horror or in other genres. We're already working on one thing that does that, whilst exploring other avenues for our other teams in anticipation of them finishing their current projects. He also mentioned that for Sony, it definitely surpassed expectations in terms of sales. We have no hard numbers of how well Until Dawn did, but as we've been seeing in the media recently and the one LTPS where we talked about it, Until Dawn has surpassed Sony's expectations. So good news all around. Like I mentioned in that LTPS, I'm so happy that Until Dawn is doing really well. You know, despite the fact that Sony didn't do very good marketing for it, the game kind of exploded on its own. I mean, this is a good thing not only for people that enjoyed Until Dawn, but certainly it's a good thing for Sony because Sony is the publisher of Until Dawn. They do own the rights to Until Dawn, so of course Supermassive Games, second-party developer in this case, they are not owned by Sony, but they did own this name. They did fund Until Dawn, so certainly if there is going to be an Until Dawn 2, so it'd be a good position for Sony to know, hey, this is going to be another PlayStation exclusive, and you know, the second time around, Sony can certainly capitalize on it. And I think the safe thing here is that Sony probably will want to greenlight an Until Dawn 2, and they will probably really capitalize on it this time around. I mean, Until Dawn just came out, so there is no way the developer is lying here. They definitely are not working on Until Dawn 2 yet, and it's very believable that they've, of course, talked about Until Dawn 2. So, you know, is it going to happen? And this is one of those, probably this will happen, and even if it isn't Supermassive Games, but I'm sure Sony would like Supermassive Games to stay on board to do it, because of course the team is already talking about it anyway. They enjoyed the game, certainly, so they would like to do a second one. So I think it's one of those situations where, of course, it's going to be years, probably, until we see the next game coming out of Supermassive, but I think there's good odds it'll probably be Until Dawn 2. And so begins the Sony cycle, so to speak. You know, they got a new IP on a new platform. The first one does really well, exceeds the expectations, so now Sony, of course, is going to want another one, and the developer is happy to do another one because they're not really burned out in the franchise yet. And then at some point, the developer, after they've done how many Until Dawns, who possibly knows, they're going to say, no, you know, we don't want to, you know, we want to do something else at this point. Maybe they'll go completely third party at this point. Maybe they'll want to go independent, sort of like Insomniac did, want to develop on multiple platforms. It's the whole rigmarole of the video game industry, so, you know, if history repeats itself, we'll probably see Until Dawn 2. Anyway, those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Shout out to the PS4, the Let's Talk PlayStation PS4 community. Over 500 people. That is awesome. So I just want to thank everybody for actually joining that. That is so cool. Still my favorite feature. I visit it every day. It's so cool. I love that thing. So Ryan on Gaming this past week was PlayStation Vita. Somebody asked me, you know, what one game, if there was one game that could save PS Vita, you know, what game would it be? So that was kind of a cool little hypothetical discussion, so go check that out. And Jack 2 Part 13 is up. Is that the one we're on right now? I honestly forget. It's crazy. I have a really terrible memory. How's everybody enjoying the Uncharted collection? Just want to throw it out there. Already got 100% in Uncharted Drake's Fortune. That's including Brutal Mode. I did that. Oh my god. Please tell me people have tried Brutal Mode. It's fucking terrible, dude. I got destroyed. Just literally just beat the hell out of. Dude, Brutal Mode ain't no joke. And I just finished Uncharted 2's Platinum, and I'm going to start Brutal Mode on that soon. And I'm not looking forward. Well, arguably Uncharted 1's harder, so I think Uncharted 2 Brutal Mode's going to be a little bit easier, but still going to be kind of difficult. I've read that there's actually a exploit to get tweaks working on Uncharted 2, but I don't even know why I'm talking about this. I don't know. You guys know me. I can just talk forever. So anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.